if we have these conditions, or let's say if the conditions are met, right? This condition is met, it could be tested because relevance mean we focus only on the first stage. If let's say the F statistic of the first stage is greater than 10, right? For the case of one instrumental variable, one endogenous variable. And next, we see that the coefficient when we regress X on Z, we observe a statistically significant variable coefficient, right? That means Z or the instrument really has some effect on X. And in terms of exogeneity or exclusion restriction, it requires the covariance of our instrument with the error term equal 0, or in other words, Z is uncorrelated with U. And when we, let's say, translate into the meaning, that means our instrument affect the Y variable through and only through X, right? And Z is,
Sorry,
uh,
can I ask some clarifications?
yes, sure, please go ahead.
So for this condition, can I interpret in the way that, like for the second exclusion condition, right, is the IV only influence the Y,
Mhm.
only through X, right? So can
Yes.
I challenge it by saying like if the Z, the IV, either directly influence the Y or it influence the Y through another channel like X prime or whatever, then
Mhm.
that exclusion is violated. Can I phrase it that way?
Uh, I would say yes, right? So here is the proper one, and the way you say it's like the opposition, right, of what we just cover. Basically, no, it's not the opposition, but um, you are answering in the way that when will the exclusion restriction be violated, right? And
Yes, correct.
yes, and I would say that that's let's say acceptable. That we say that if Z affects directly affect Y directly, right? You remember in our diagram we have the Z, the X, right? That cause our the direct interpretation, the direct relationship, um, and the one that makes sure that Z is affect Y only through X is, you remember we have more or less the triangle, right? And we have the arrow from Z to X and then X mm, to Y, right? If Z could go through, I don't know, maybe W and W to Y, then it will be violated. Yes, I would say you could write that, but if possible, please try to write more or less. It is all for about your future, let's say, phrasings when you write your master thesis, right? If by chance you use the IV in your regression, then writing like something like Z affect Y through and only through X is a safe option. Yes, but what when you write your understanding, let's say for this condition, is correct and is still acceptable here in this in our course. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Good. And then next in terms of IV, I want you to understand how we could write IV, the beta coefficient IV in terms of covariance. Remember in OLS, we have covariance of Y and X divided by variance of X, right? Variance of X is no different than covariance of X with X, right? And in terms of IV, we just replace X by Z, right? Because now we already claim that we want to extract the good variation of X. by, let's say, using the effect of our instrument, right? So our coefficient will be translated into covariance of y and z divided by covariance of x and z, right? Okay. And so I think for IV, what one very classical paper that I would say that used the instrument that been widely accepted uh, or discussed is the Levin paper, right? The Levin, Loyer, and Beck 2000 paper when they use the legal origins, right? You don't need to remember the correct numbers, but at least you know what is the idea, what is the challenges, and how they do that, how they use the IV. For example, in terms of legal origin instrument, mm, so why should we use, or what is the motivation for us to use this as an IV? So first, the country legal origin, that could be either common law or civil law, right? And the legal origin is historically predetermined and shapes investor protection, contract enforcement, and in the end, it could shape the financial development of the country. And why is this relevant, and why is this, let's say, exogenous, right? In terms of relevance, the legal origin will help us predict the financial intermediary development or develop the private credit, right? But in terms of exogeneity, conditional on the controls, the legal origin is argued to affect the growth, which is our Y variable, right? It affects the growth through financial development, not through any contemporaneous shocks to grow, right? Because here, as you already learned in class, that exclusion restriction could not be fully tested, right? We need to use your economic training to explain, to tell a story, to convince our readers that this one is indeed a good instrument and the legal origin actually affects growth through and only through the financial development. Yeah. So again, maybe check the paper Levin and co-authors 2000 again to grab an idea, right? And for example, and then next we have the difference in difference, right? Difference in difference, what do we need, or the core assumption we want to keep in mind when we apply this is the parallel trend assumption, right? So parallel trend means in the absence of treatment, the treated and control group would have followed the same trend in outcomes over time. Yeah, you remember we have the dashed line for the treated group. That is what we do not observe, right? Or we call it the counterfactuals. And then the actual increase or decrease of the treatment group. But in short, the key assumption is parallel trend. And why do we need to include the list and the lack of our variables? So when we include for the list, we try to test for the pre-trends, right? Or the anticipations, right? And we do not want to see any significant coefficient before the treatment, right? Otherwise, we are not able to claim or to reassure the reader that indeed the shock is exogenous. Because if we see any statistically significant coefficient before the treatment, before the treatment. That means people already predict this and they change their behavior even before the treatment takes place, right? And the shock is no more exogenous. And in one paper that we discussed in this class, then they try to find the dynamics effect of the difference in difference, right? To start AI companion. Okay, let me see. I think I should click on start AI, right? Because I don't know how many credits I still have, but let's give it a try. Um, okay, so I think I accepted AI companion is there, right? Okay. Good. Um, yep. So that's the key
Sorry,
assumption. Yes.
can I ask, if you don't
Yes,
mind,
sure.
like
Yes.
when looking at the regression table, how you know whether this is a local DID or is a dynamic DID? Will
Okay.
you like
So
provide context for us? Because like say for example in the paper, then if we actually read through the paper, then we understand that. But without a
yes.
context, then it's quite challenging.
Yes. Okay, so basically when they if in short in the regression table, right? If we see only let's say treat, post, and then treat times post, right? We only have like the three terms like that. Then that is the average treatment effect. Why? Because here the post covers our average for after for let's say it takes the average of all observation after the treatment takes place, right? But if you have something like the post one with some t in it, so maybe post t minus one, post t plus one, post t plus two, something like that. That means now we have different value of post that may accept the, let's say, the value at each different year after the treatment. And then you will, we know that they're probably how, this is how the authors try to, let's say, identify the different levels of regression. That's one very, I think, fundamental one I could tell you for now. But again, or maybe let's say when you look at so give me 1 second. I think in the papers and also in the slide when we have like the regression, they give you the regression, and it's not only treat time post, but it's like the sum, right? The sum of data time post t, something like that. Then you know that there are many post variable capture the effect of many different years after the treatment takes place. Do we have that in the slide? I'm not quite sure. Let me check. Uh, do you remember if we do cover that in the slide regarding the dynamic one? I think that's only very brief, right? Because we focus more on the two groups and two periods.
Sorry, another name for the dynamic DID is the event study, right? Or is it the same vocabulary or different?
I would say yes, it's the same. So event study mean here we want to see the effect of some event, how the effects could be the same or different across the years. Yeah, event study is one let's say context where we could use the DD regression. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me check the slide again. Action note. Right. So we have this. Yes, so we have after we cover the two periods and two groups, we have some extension, right? And in the extension, we try to have varying treatment intensities, right? And heterogeneous effect. Hmm, I think the group specific trend, I will skip that. Hmm, maybe we have to open the paper again. So could you tell me which paper do we use this DD regression?
Paper
Or let's
four,
say,
the Q train. Paper four, the
okay,
Q train.
okay. Yes, check the Q trend, right? Do they include the regression? Let me see. Um, let's see if I could share my screen with you. Check the Q trick, right? Okay, so for example, here in this paper, we have only we have this variable, right? Both treatment treatment is one is the treated group, zero if it's control, both is zero if it's before the treatment, and one if it's after the treatment, right? And both time treatment here, we basically find all of the average value after the treatment. So this one is the actually the average value. We do not have any dynamics here, right? Are you okay so far?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then they try to uh include, I think, figure number 5, right? So dynamic price effect. Um, so here, where they try to show the coefficient estimate from dynamic difference in different specification, right? Let's see. So basically now they have the interaction terms, but it is for, it's not only post for covering all period, but now we have different value of post, and we see that here in for example, for year number 4, right, to year 12, the coefficient is positive, but the standard, sorry, the confidence interval is quite large, and it includes 0 in it, right? So there might be the case that, yeah, during those time after that, so after the treatment, both period, and you can see that previously we have the uh, coefficient for both that is significant, right? But it's the average here. The blue one is the average of all the years. But now when we split them into in total difference, 2, 6, 7, 7, right? In total 7 coefficient for BOST. So maybe BOST 13, BOST 14, BOST 15, BOST 16, 17, 18, and 19, thing like 15, right? For all the years. So in total, each year, or let's say on average, now when we split them into different periods, we could see, or let's say the dynamic is reviewed. Why is this? Because actually from year 13 to 15, the effects is not significant yet, right? So we see that it's still the confidence interval still statistically significant, right? But only from year 16, then the effects is, let's say the effects increase, right? Um, Let me share my screen again. So now if when we split them into the effects over the years, we see that actually the years only after years 15, right? From 16 onwards, we see an effect, and from 13 to 15, the effect is not there yet. It's just a way to help us recover. It's no more average of all the periods after that, although in econometrics we want to focus on the average value, right? But it gives us more insight, right? So actually the effect takes some time, right, to show, and it makes sense, right? Because right after the uh the treatment period, we see a significant surge in it that less likely to be plausible. Okay. And to write this one, so I think in the regression, do they include that? Let me see. They, one way to show it to is to uh, include the sum of all treat times the BOST coefficient. We do not have one BOST, but we have a lot of variable. But I think in this case, they do not include that. But that's how we're gonna do. So basically here, in the regression, treat tempos do they include here? Let me check. No. Oh, here. So instead of treat time post, they will have like a sum of beta I times treat time post. And both there, we take the value, different value of t, not only 0 and 1 anymore. Okay, so are you okay so far?
Sorry, last question, because I'm still a
Yes.
little bit confused. So what is the interpretation? Is the main result for interpretation is just the local DID, but the dynamic DID is just for like some sort of like robustness to ensure that you have the parallel trend. Is it correct? Or even for the dynamic, we have to interpret the coefficient here because it's not one anymore. It's like, you vary through time already.
Yes, Okay, I see your point. So actually for a standard difference in difference, we just want to find the average effect, right? What is the average difference, maybe increase or decrease of treatment group before and after the treatment, right? But the way that we try to use the dynamic DAD is helpful to first, as you said, to test if the parallel trend is violated. Second, it will also help us to see how to say the dynamic, or no, I will try to use the other word. So maybe
The evolution.
the evolution, probably, yes, evolution of the treatment. We want to see them. So maybe for some effect, for some let's talk about maybe the implementation of the new uh I don't know, fine, or let's say heavy fine on crossing the red line, right? That already took place in Vietnam, I think last year, right? That might be the case that we see a surge in the number of fines right after the treatments, but over the year, then maybe the effect becomes smaller and smaller, or it become insignificant, because actually maybe the people now they do not, they have a way to overcome the, I don't know, maybe the police is not there anymore. They are not on the street to catch you, something like that. Or maybe the reporting program is not attractive enough anymore, right? Then we see a surge, and then it becomes let's say deteriorate, and then it becomes insignificant, right? But for some others treatment, some other event, then maybe 1 or 2 years after the treatment, we do not see an increase yet, because it should take some time to um, for the groups to change or something like that. And from year 3 onwards, we will see an increase. And from that point in time, it's an increase for a longer period, for long run, right? Then in short, why we the reason why we split it, we use the dynamic DID, is to see how the treatment magnitude varies over the year, right? But the core one, the one that I want you to, let's say, understand and to comprehend, is maybe just narrow down to the very simple one, that two groups and two periods, right? Treatment and control groups, and pre and post period. And how should we interpret the coefficient here? Maybe the gamma one, the delta one, and the beta one, right? And I think as in the mock exam, here, right? I may ask you to, of course, like we do not cover this paper, but it's the same for another paper. If we get the idea right, right? So here, this is the average of the control group, right? Before the treatment. So this is the intercept with 0, right? But the control group and the treatment group, they are different. Here is always different before and after. So this beta 1, and this is the average of the control both treatment, and here is the average of the treatment group, both treatment. So how should we interpret the results, or the coefficient of beta 1, beta 0, beta 1 plus delta 1, something like that, right? So that's what I want you to understand, and to, you should be able to write from your understanding. No need to memorize. Okay. Mm, good. Yeah. Then here for the papers, right? So I cover like the key points, crucial points for 7 problems, right? And in problem number 8, this one you could hatch basically what is the research question, the challenge, and the empirical strategy, and also try to give me, of course, when you understand what they're trying to do, then at least what is the variable of interest, right? The X variable and the Y variable. These are the two crucial one. And in terms of IV, what is the instrument? Right. And to describe that, you describe that in the empirical strategy or the identification strategy. Basically, identification strategy is how researchers show that they could, let's say they apply the techniques to, how to say, to disentangle or to review the true effect, true causal effect of X on Y. Okay. So basically, that's it. So I strongly recommend you to maybe to save time um, to go through the summary. So those it contains the key points that for sure I want you to keep in mind even after you walk away from the class. You still have it ready at a toolbox in your mind. And regarding some let's say ideas of the papers, of course, covering the 9 papers that you discuss in class. But in I only ask you to explicitly cover 2 papers when you write down in the exam, right? You do not need to write all 9 papers, but only 2. One is the paper that you present, and the other one is the paper from your cohort group. And for others papers included in the slide, it